Visit us online at aromasondemand.com.
Juggernaut sound. Juggernaut sound. Juggernaut sound. Juggernaut sound. Getting the word out about what is both now and next. Juggernaut sound.
It's time for some sex, drugs, and hip-hop. Bringing the freshest in hip-hop, rap, and R&B every Thursday at 9.
XSite.radio.com.
It's time to get serious. Seriously f***ed up. Grab your lunchbox and prepare to enjoy some Gorilla Cookie Radio Show. Live every Thursday at 7 with your host, Silverback, and his co-host in disguise, Tool Ranchula, as they fill your brain with chocolate-filled truth every Thursday at 7.
XSite.radio.com.
It's time for you to meet madness head on. Greet insanity with open arms and embrace delusion with a handshake and a gun to your head. It's time for American Psycho. Here's the crow. Call, mother call.
Wow. Hey, everybody. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Welcome to another episode of American Psycho. We are broadcasting live from Los Angeles because that's where we are.
Like you was. I just needed you to...
And it sounds like we're going to get things off and running rather immediately. Gentlemen, are you here on the line?
Yeah, Lewis Taylor and Andy Silverman are here.
Very cool. So, just as a quick intro, this week on American Psycho, we are going to get sort of down deep and dark and dirty into a case that... stemming from Arizona, frankly, when I heard about it, not a lot shocks me, really, very little. And this one was like an emotional kick in the teeth. So we are going to talk about a man by the name of Lewis C. Taylor, who was quite wrongly accused many years ago of starting a fire at a hotel, and he spent the greater portion of his life behind bars wrongly, and people knew. So this is really about, and he's recently been somewhat kind of exonerated, but not exactly. But so the fight for him goes on. And right now joining us on the phone, who do we got? Who's on the phone right now?
Oh, okay, thanks for having us, man. Like I said, on behalf of Cobra Radio, the Justice Project, and the Innocence Project, we got Andy Silverman, university law professor, retired, but he's still, active, and it's me, Lewis Taylor. So we're here, and we're trying to, to keep our word that we're going to do this radio show for you guys, and maybe we can extend our expansion to people know about this case.
Absolutely. No, I think it's mandatory that people know about this case. As I said, man, there is not a lot that shakes me up, and I said that, and man, I heard your story, and it bowled me over, absolutely bowled me over, and I can't even for a minute think that my emotional reaction to it can't even be 1/1,000,000th of what it had to be for you to go through it.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. It's just the thing is that it is what it is, and it's for many years from the very day they accused me of this, people already had their doubts and stuff. But the thing is that it's the past, and I don't regret nothing that happened to me, and other than that, they should have not held evidence, and chaptered with the jury, and because I was innocent. But yeah, I had a lot of adversity, but I had a lot of faith in the people who believed in me, the Justice Project, the Innocence Project in New York. And that's the thing, we're trying to put a human picture to this, so hopefully that, the 42 years, it won't be in vain, at least they should do that, at least for me.
You would think. So let's get into some of the specifics of the case. So, I mean, all right, so, hang on 1 second while the, there we go.
First of all, if you don't mind intervening, can you allow the professor to talk first, and then maybe I can talk after him?
Whatever you're comfortable with. Although I will say one of my initial thoughts was to actually find out what are the details of the specifics of what you were accused of.
Well, I was accused of setting the fire in 1970 at the Pioneer International Hotel in Tucson, Arizona, which was on Pennington and Stone. Mm-hmm. And they charged me with arson and murder, and I went to trial in Phoenix, because of the publicity, they had put motions, because they said I wouldn't got a fair trial in Tucson. So I was tried in Phoenix in 1972, and March of 1972, an all-white jury found me guilty. And
imagine that.
The judge sentenced me to natural life, and it started from there.
So, I mean, because I was reading some stuff on the case today to at least sort of be somewhat prepared, which is unusual for me. So, I mean, I remember there was something about there at one point, initial reports had said that there had been reports that you were actually helping people get out of the hotel. And then there was something about, oh no, he was seen with like a bunch of cigarettes and matches, and you'd said that the cops had actually given you those?
Well, during the interviews, yeah, the police officers, they interrogated me, and they allowed me to smoke cigarettes and stuff, and in my purse, and between my jacket and pocket, they found books of matches, and cigarettes. And inadvertently at the trial, they used the matches against me. But you got to wait. First of all, I was charged with arson and murder. But, there was no physical evidence, linking me to the murder or the arson. They found no physical evidence that could link whether it was a fire here or there. And the thing about it is, like I was telling you, when you told me, well, Louis, I'm really appalled because, this happens all the time. And people are getting tired. The prosecutors saying, well, we're very sorry it happened, this and that. But the thing about it is, in the end, it doesn't really matter because in the end, they discovered jury tampering. One of the detectives who interrogated me that night for almost 12, 14 hours without a parent, without giving me water or a recording of the device to preserve what was being said between me and the officers. Well, this officer inadvertently tampered with a jury, and the juror gave him a synopsis of each individual jury, whether wishy-washy, smart, wise, and this and that. And by that time, the prosecution had infected the judge, and he dismissed jurors. He said that he wasn't going to put on the record why he dismissed the jury, but he said that he's not going to, it was for corrective measures. But like I said, in the end, and also they hit a Trousdale report. They could have got an exoneration 40 years ago that was found in the prosecutor's office or in the fire department. So what do you do after that?
Punt?
What? This is Andy Silverman, and I don't know if there's some details of what Louis was indicating to you is a number of things that happened in his trial that points to one of our major claims which
sure,
was
and allow me to cut you off for just a moment. So, Andy Silverman, and you're an attorney involved in the case. Is that correct?
Yes, I'm an attorney involved in the case. I'm on the faculty at the University of Arizona Law School. Mm-hmm. I was involved in this project through the Arizona Justice Project. So myself and law students at the law school began working on the case in the early, about 12 years ago, or 10 years before, or 11 years before Louis was released.
So how did this case come to your attention?
Well, the founder of the Arizona Justice Project, who is a very renowned lawyer in Phoenix named Larry Hammond, had met Louis when Louis was in prison, and Larry got to know Louis and know about the case. I also, and of course, anybody that lived in Tucson at the time, or even many who came afterwards, knew about the fire at the Pioneer Hotel and the what happened with Lewis Taylor, and so we knew about the case, but when the law school got involved in the Justice Project around 1999-2000, Larry said the first case that we need to look at is the Lewis Taylor case. And of course, as I said, we were all a little familiar with it or knew something about it, and that started over about 12 years of work by the Justice Project, by volunteer lawyers, law students,
The Innocence Project,
lots of different people working on this case from different angles.
So when the case first got in front of you and you began really delving into it, what were some of the glaring things that stood out to you that was like, okay, wait a minute, this is a bunch of crap?
Well, I mean, the very first thing that we started looking at the case and continued to be a main focus of the case, of course, was whether this was even an arson.
Right.
We knew that the fire science of 1970 was much different than the fire science today, and we suspected and that under the fire science today that there would probably be a real question of whether this was an arson, and so that became really the first and primary focus. But what was amazing about this case, as we continued to work on it, got more deeply into it, we found things that continually surprised us and shocked us, that amounted to many more claims in the case. Many of them around the issue of misconduct by the prosecutor.
Mm-hmm. Like what kinds of misconduct did you find that the prosecutor had committed?
Well, the thing about it is like we said, when I got out of prison, and all my family and the people who supported me, the Innocence Justice Project, they were all waiting outside the gate, outside the prison. Like I told the newsman, this is a tale of two tragedies: the Pine International Hotel fire and my conviction. Because, like you said, initially when I got convicted by an all-white jury, automatically people started saying, "Oh, there's something terribly wrong here." But yeah, Horton Weiss, in fact, after my trial, he had to go to jail for 15 days for past prosecution misconducts. But what he did in this case was that he infected the judge, he infected the jury, and he withheld a scientific report that could have exonerated me 40 years ago that was hidden, like I said, in the prosecutor's office or in the fire department. So where do you go from there? But the thing about it is that if you say a fire was lit with matches, certainly, what they alleged, they used two juveniles who alleged to be with me and were with me in juvenile, but the prosecutor coached them into saying that I had told one of them in juvenile that I had squirted lighter fluid on the fourth floor and lit it with numerous books and matches. Okay? Now, you got to remember also, when we talked about it earlier, when the mayor of Tucson and the city of Tucson, they hired a forest fire expert to look into the structural building, and like I said, the way he done it was, he came there 11 days later. He's supposed to do an independent study, not a study that other people would follow his hypothesis. And before he even stepped in there, they said, "Oh, by the way, we got a little color boy in custody for this." So, I mean, it has so many angles. But what's so amazing in this story is that everybody volunteered. So many people volunteered. The Innocence Project volunteered, the Justice Project. I mean, people, lawyers, investigators. Because in something like this, the justice said we're supposed to have the best justice system in the United States, in which we know we don't have. I don't know no reason why America lost more people in this country than any other part in the world. But yeah, the justice system in Arizona, especially out of the prosecutor's office, certainly they should keep an eye on that office for many years to come, because it's a travesty. It's injustice. You know what I mean? And like you said, looking at the human aspect of it, there's really nothing you can do. because the actionality, the trial was a mockery. It was a sham when you discover that. And then you know it was a sham when a judge sends you and then 2 weeks later sneaks into prison and tells you, I think I made a mistake. No, I mean, come on.
Wait,
I mean,
I'm gonna slam the brakes on. So you got convicted, you then got incarcerated, and 2 weeks later, the judge presiding over your case shows up at the prison and says, "Oh, hey, oops."
I invited him. I invited him into the 7-Step Foundation. I was there like 16, 17 days. I was already involved in school, college, going to 7-Step Foundation. And I invited him to have dinner with me at the 7-Step Foundation, and he accepted. So he came and sat next to me. He had dinner, and he made an announcement and said that he was the judge that was presided over the Lewis Taylor trial, and he said that I'm pretty sure that you're going to hear a lot of that case in the later years. But he's also the judge that said that he would have never, immediately after my trial, he interviewed him, and he said, I would have never convicted Lewis Taylor if I had been the jury. So, I mean, wow. How do you equate that?
Well, I hear that after all this time, because I hear there's a certain amount of of acceptance of your situation. But at the time, didn't that just make you nuts? I would go through the roof.
The thing about it is, I didn't know the calamity of it. I thought, the way my lawyers represented me. I had two lawyers, Howard Cashman and David Liverthal, and they were telling me, well, we're going to go back on appeal and this and that. But there's one thing about justice, and I'm gonna give you an example. Many years back, when Martin Luther King was doing marches in Mississippi and Alabama and this and that. Well, the Ku Klux Klan, they bombed a church and killed 3 little girls. Well, they were brought to justice 41 years later, see? And the thing about it is, they hit so many things, in my case, that they were buried so deep, but they came back to life and they came back to haunt them because, it's a travesty. I mean, a man doesn't do 42 years in prison on just innuendo or unsubstantiated facts. And I don't blame society for that. I blame the detectives, the police officers, the judges, and that's it. That's where the responsibility goes to, and the prosecutor's office.
But I guess what I'm curious about, just sort of drilling down a little deep, understanding how you're, again, being very fair about where you're placing blame.
Well, you have to be fair. I've been to conferences, with the prosecution, being there, and I did speeches for the University of Arizona for the law students who work at the Justice Project, because that's one of the greatest rewards for the Justice Project, when they see the fruits of their labor, when they see somebody that's innocent, and they take them out, see? That's their gratification. But the thing about it is that, there's no money, place, or thing they can replace 42 years. I've lost that. And inadvertently, I lost most of all my family, 80% of my family, so it's an injustice, but, what do you do? You have to go for it. You can't show bitterness. Sure. Because then the rest of your life will be bitter, and then, they've already took 42 years already, so what do you do?
No, I totally agree. Absolutely. And I guess I'm wondering, at the time, though, tell me, how did that feel to you? To wake up every day for the amount of time that you did?
Well, that is one of the most loneliest things in the world to do, to be part of, or even... I faced so much adversity, but I knew I was innocent. I couldn't give up. That wasn't an option, I finished college. I went to trade school. I worked as a medical technician. Wow. I filed my own lawsuits in the federal courts and acted as my own attorney and prevailed. Life is short, man. Some babies don't even come out of their mother's wombs and they die. They never get I've been on this earth 60 years, and I thank God, and I also thank the Justice Project, the Innocence Project, and all the people who were involved in this case. It took us almost 11, 12 years, solid years, to investigate it and finally bring it to an end.
So I'm curious. So tell me about, tell me about the 24 to 48 hours prior to the incident that you were accused of. What was your life like before that?
Well, before, I went to Fort Bragg, as a kid, for petty things. I lived in the projects. There was 10 members of my family. I was the breadwinner of the family. And all the time that I hustled for my family in the streets, or whatever I had to do to support my family, I never killed anyone, and I never started any fires, and I never hurt anybody. So what other person in America didn't do that to try to help their family? I quit school to help my mom and my family. I didn't have no father, and we lived in the projects. And now I come back 42 years later, and all my family's dead. And I forgive them. I forgive them, everybody who did that to me. But it's just, it's just pointless to, I mean, they did a bad deed, and everybody knows, and God knows. So, where do you go from there? It just, in the early years, it didn't matter to me because I was going to school. I finished high school. I finished college. I went to trade school. I studied civil law. Because I had a choice. They told me, Mr. Taylor, what do you want to do, study civil law or criminal law? And I said civil. And then later years, I filed lawsuits against DOC and won in federal courts. I acted as my own attorney. So God is great.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that is once again a phenomenal testament to your.
Could you imagine, innocent or guilty, if you get free education in prison and you're doing natural life? Certainly, I mean, you have to better yourself whether you're innocent or not. And that's what helped me. I didn't dwell on everything that they did to me because, someday they have to go before somebody and tell them why they did that. But my job was to maintain my innocence because I was innocent, and I had a lot of support. I never gave up, and I got busy. I stayed busy. I turned a negative into a positive, and that's all you can do in a tragedy like this.
I absolutely agree.
Lewis actually has, really a wonderful attitude about, a real travesty that happened. Obviously, a great injustice to him and really to the whole criminal justice system. But he has a really good attitude about it. He doesn't, he doesn't hold grudges in that way. Since he's got out of prison, he's tried to look forward. Has he had some ups and downs? Sure. Lewis Taylor grew up in prison, and so there obviously is some transition out of prison for someone in Lewis's position.
Let's be accurate. He didn't just grow.
There's websites that have been set up for instance, one called there's websites to try to help him by raising money for him. But it's been difficult. But Lewis has made a lot of progress in really a short amount of time. I think the one website is GoFundMe.com.
I was just going to ask you.
But the thing about it is, we talked before earlier, initially me and you, and like you said, of course, man, people will get appalled when they hear cases like this because they should, and, you have to do the right thing. The governor in Illinois once, there was 3 men that were executed in Illinois. Their DNA came back negative. They couldn't have been the murderers. So, this governor, it was eating up his conscience. It was eating inside of him all the time, and he said, God forbid, everybody that's in death row is in jeopardy now of either being executed, not having a chance to an appeal, or get executed. So he gave everybody that was on death row a life sentence. Then later on in years, they went after him and charged him for corruption. But, don't make no mistake about it. The thing about it is, sure, it's a travesty, but the thing about it is something like that, Mandela did 27 years in Devil's Island, one of the most harshest prisons, fighting apartheid in South Africa, and he became president of South Africa. So, he had a purpose. I had a purpose. I don't know what in the hell I didn't listen to my mom. I wanted to go to a party in the hotel because every year they had parties, and I was always going there. I shined shoes, sold tamales everywhere in Tucson. I made a living supporting my family, but I didn't kill no one. I didn't start no fires. So the thing about it is, you have to go for it. You have to be negative. You have to be positive because if you show negativity, then the rest of your life will be negative. And I got a good support system, the Innocence Project, Justice Project, and a lot of wonderful people who still believe in me and will always believe in me. And that's all you got to go by is just by that.
No, I would absolutely agree. I mean, I once again, I think it is a testament to your strength and clearly your level of character. That I mean, look, it's easy to not easy, but I would say that not everybody would necessarily have the same outlook and attitude about it that you do. It would.
Well, like I said, I had a lot of wonderful families.
Sure.
that inadvertently took care of me. I stayed in contact with them. My lawyer, Howard Passman, who's now in Colorado. He still practices law. I've already seen him and stuff. I lived with his family. I was living with Jewish families that took care of me. They believed in me, and I lived with Howard Cashman, David Liverthal. I lived with. I went to a private school in 1970, and then in 1972, an all-white jury that was tampered with, and found me guilty. And it's a travesty, but like I said. I don't focus on it. I don't dwell on it because I'm going for it, and God forbid, as long as my name stays up and it never dies, then the 42 years won't be in vain, and that's why, I want to make sure, that as long as I'm on this earth, nobody will ever forget that because I don't want another man to endure what I did. And certainly the prosecutor's office, they need to take a good look at him because, it's justified.
I mean, the criminal justice system is clearly imperfect, and imperfection is bound to be set up in any sort of system of justice. But you're talking about the jury tampering, and I'd like to get into that for a moment because I think that's crucial. I think it's important to know what kind of jury tampering went on, and how did you become aware of it?
Well, we didn't become aware until later on.
Sure.
In fact, one of our experts who was Smythe, this is a gentleman who was the fire experts for the families who sued the city and the Pioneer Hotel because they held a lot of secrets. Prior to the 1970 fire, there was 3 other fires there that were brushed underneath the rug. There was a lot of robberies. In fact, most of the people who were in that hotel and families and kids never had a chance. Because, they hid a lot of secrets. And the thing about it is, Rex Angeli, who became a detective, well, when my trial came up in 1972, he became all of a sudden a prosecutor's aide. So there was a dismissed juror that was dismissed by Charles Hardy, my trial judge. So the prosecution followed her and had conversations, phone conversations that we were fortunate enough to receive through the telephone because everything was being recorded. So this detective who interrogated me when I was a kid and trying to get me to confess to this when I knew I was innocent, he tampered with this jury, and this juror gave him a synopsis of each individual juror, whether wishy-washy, smart, dumb, and inadvertently the judge was infected too by that time, and he dismissed some jurors. So what do? So now in my heart, I know the trial was a mockery, it was a sham, but I'm not going to dwell on it. I'm not going to let it destroy the rest of my life. I'm going to go for it.
Sure, no, I totally
get it. What can you do?
The main reason I ask is what I'm really looking to do is to paint a picture, a totality of what exactly went on.
Well, let Andy answer that question because he, like I said, he knows more than I do. He's a law professor.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and so you said you would like to paint a picture of what happened
I'm really
as
trying
far as the prosecution of this case?
I mean, I'm really, because clearly there was a justice got derailed, sort of like at the end of the movie Silver Streak, plowing right through the train station.
Let me kind of lay it out briefly for you about how I think your point is well taken, how justice was derailed. And it was derailed in this case really from the very moment that the police took Lewis Taylor into custody, did not call his mother, did not provide a lawyer, questioned him from around early, midnight to for 8 or 9 hours, and multiple police officers. He asked for a lie detector test. They brought in someone to give him one.
Now, in Arizona, is a polygraph test admissible? Because I know that there's always questions about
No,
that.
it's not.
Okay.
And especially then it was not. No.
Sure. Now then, the other
And
thing, but normally, okay, I don't mean to interrupt, but so I mean, I know that you're talking about this. So he was questioned for 8 or 9 hours, and he was questioned without his parents present.
He was 16 years old at the time.
Okay, so this is what I want to clarify. So he's a minor being questioned by authorities, and the rule book says that his parents should have been present. Correct?
Well, they should. Yes, they should have been informed.
Yes. So his parents should have been able to give permission. Yes, you make, or at least have been in the room, and he was not offered any sort of representation.
No.
Okay. So so those two things right there are a huge miscarriage of justice.
And so he was, questioned these many hours. It turned out that they really could not get a result from a lie detector test because of the, loss of sleep, the stress that he was under. They then decided to arrest him. That's when they searched him and found the matches on him, which he was a smoker. Actually the police in his presence were smoking, gave him matchbooks. But that became part of their case. The
planting of evidence.
What?
I was saying planting of
evidence. I can
evidence.
tell you what the evidence against Lewis Taylor was at the trial, which was the prosecution had a very weak case until actually they rested. And let me explain. The prosecution's case was the fact that the experts at the time said it was an arson, that Lewis Taylor was at the Pioneer Hotel when the fire did break out, that he, during the night and during the questioning, but that was not recorded, they claimed he made some inconsistent statements.
God, hang out with me for 8 or 9 hours just in general. I'll make inconsistent statements.
Right.
What's that?
Right. And some of the inconsistent statements might have been where Lewis during the night came up for them with various scenarios of how this might have happened. Because remember when the fire broke out, Lewis started going from hotel room to hotel room, saving people. We talked to at that time the hotel had a elevator operator, if you remember those days.
Sure.
And she, indicated that Lewis, would bring children and elderly people to the elevator, would never get on the elevator himself, went back to another room, got more people. So he saved many people that night. So obviously it was a very traumatic evening. So, so he, as you said, it's not, out of the ordinary that someone after that many hours of both going through what he did at the hotel to many hours of questioning might make some inconsistent statements. But he claimed his innocence from the very moment that they began to question him. And he maintains his innocence, of course, till today. Still.
So let's...
but some of the things that occurred in the prosecution of the case, once that he was charged, just to give you some examples of what happened with this case is that one of the contentions that ended up in this case was that accelerants were used to start this fire, even though they did not find any accelerants on Lewis or on his hands or anything of that nature. There was a company that did some tests to see if there was any accelerants on the carpeting in the area where the fire began. And they came to the conclusion that there was not. The prosecution got this report and never informed the defense. The court never turned it over.
Wow.
When it came to the trial, as I explained, the prosecution actually had a fairly weak case. And, well, let me just backtrack. Before trial, we have discovered a phone conversation between the prosecuting attorney and the judge, again, where the defense attorney had not been informed, really never knew about this conversation, where they were talking about some substantive things, about some things that the prosecution wanted, and so on. And, this was as much a blame of the prosecution and, of the judge as much as the prosecution. But just the idea that an attorney would call a judge and talk to a judge about a case without informing the attorney on the opposing side beforehand. And so, so that occurred in this case. So we get to trial, as I said, they had a fairly weak case. They rested on a Friday. Miraculously, over the weekend, even though they had been working on this, I think, for a while, but miraculously over the weekend they came up with two people who indicated to the police that when Lewis was in juvenile detention, that is when he was first arrested because he was 16 years old, he was put in juvenile detention. And they claimed that Lewis indicated to them that he set this fire. The primary witness who testified about this said that Lewis told him that he set the fire by using accelerants. Well, that's how accelerants became an important part of this whole story. That this, what they call a jailhouse snitch, indicated how what Lewis said is how this fire was, how he started this fire, where there was clearly evidence that the prosecution had that accelerants weren't used, and the prosecution was allowed to reopen its case, present its testimony. After Lewis was convicted, this primary witness who gave this testimony that Lewis indicated to him that he set this fire and how he did it, recanted his testimony.
Multiple times.
Right. And Lewis's trial attorney, Howard Cashman, brought a motion before Judge Hardy. There was a hearing set. At this hearing, this witness, this person, the snitch, recanted his recantation. Well, there's a feeling that what happened here is, again, the prosecution had got to him in some way before this hearing, because we do know that for his testimony at the trial, not only were charges dismissed, you cannot find in court records that he was even charged. Usually when charges are dismissed, it's public record. Right. There's still a public record that you were charged and so on. We could not find any record that he was ever even charged.
Gotcha. So Andy, let me interrupt you for a second. Because the wealth of, just the obvious amount of evidence that would say that Lewis Taylor was innocent. How did this happen then?
Here's the thing. If you want to put it in even more a better perspective, the woman elevator operator who worked there, she was my age. She was 16 years old. Mm-hmm. She made 10 trips up in the top floors, and she said that when she opened up that elevator in the top floors, she seen me, a little Mexican, African-American, speaking fluent Spanish, trying to put stuff, as many people in the elevator, kids, elderly people, anybody I could find, me and these officers, we were stuffing them in the elevator, but not once did Lewis Taylor get in the elevator himself. Come on now, I mean, there was early signs of innocence. But the thing about it is, you don't have Arizona's most tragic fire and then hire a forest fire expert that doesn't know, anything about structural fires, buildings and stuff. And, and that's the thing, when they did the deposition on Holmes, who was the state's expert, after he gave his responses to the deposition to the judges and the fire department and the prosecutor's team who was there, everybody walked out because they were appalled of his answers. So that'll put a little more perspective to you. Like that. And another thing I like to convey is that, I don't have not a ill bone in my body, and I never had. The thing is, God always tells us we have to forgive those who do the bad deeds to us, because for little things that we got away with when we were kids, we got to ask for forgiveness too. So if we don't ask for forgiveness, then we can't forgive anybody else. So, like I said, it's a tragedy, and yeah, you're right. A guy doesn't do 42 years in prison, comes out of an angel. But I educated myself. I'm having a little trouble in the transition and stuff, but I'm focused. I like doing speeches and I like telling my story, and that's all I want in life is to just tell my story. My life's on Google. Like I said, I'm trying to start a little foundation to make sure that this never happens again. And I hope it doesn't to any man, and I don't care what country he's in.
Sure, I guess. But what my question is, and I'm wondering almost again from Andy's standpoint, because he spends his days working in the legal system. How does, with the wealth of evidence of your innocence, how does this miscarriage of justice
because you
happen?
have a jury that is supposed to go by the evidence and not anything else, and it's just unfortunate that I didn't have African Americans in the jury. I didn't have Mexican Americans in the jury. People are my peers.
So do you?
But in the early set, can't you just figure it out? I mean, if this prosecutor immediately after the commencement of my trial, he had to go straight to jail. What does that tell you?
So,
I mean, come on.
Right. Well,
this guy convinced the judge to hide a scientific report, God forbid, that was discovered by one of our experts. And he didn't know the significance of it until after he went back and got all the files. That's when he discovered the jury tampering and the Trailsdale report that said clearly that they found no accelerants of any kind and no physical evidence of any kind of arson on that fourth floor.
So Lewis, who was your attorney on the case?
His name was Howard Cashman and David Liverthal. He was appointed immediately to be chief public defender at the Pima County Public Defender's Office. In fact, he was the first chief public defender that was appointed that.
And so
but the thing about it is, if in the end you see that they tampered with the jury and they withheld a scientific report. See, early on in the stages of the trial, Mr. Hardy told the prosecutor, Mr. Weiss, I heard there's some type of scientific report running around or floating around, this and that, blah, blah, this and that. And he convinced the judge that there wasn't, and if in fact there was, he would be, forwarded to the defense. But now, in essence, we know he didn't. So what do you do?
I totally get all that, but my question is, where are those guys now? And where? I mean, so if
Hayes died of throat cancer, it was certainly no ill feelings of mine. He just that was his destiny.
Sure, but what I was also
the fire captain who worked for the fire department. He inadvertently snuck up to the news media and told the news media, "Oh, I smell accelerants on the fourth floor." Well, of course, later on at the trial, they coached these children to telling this jury that I told them that I had squirted lighter fluid and lit it with books and matches so I can ransack the Pioneer Hotel. And when I went to the juvenile authorities, I only had $11 in my pocket, my watch, and my gold chain, and not one thing was missing out of the Pioneer Hotel. So what do you do?
So how did your defense attorneys let this happen?
Well, let Andy answer that. Go ahead, Andy. What about? Well,
Andy, what I'm curious about is, given the wealth of evidence, who dropped the ball? Because somebody clearly did. They didn't just drop the ball; they threw it off the top of the building. I mean, with all of this evidence, I'm not an attorney. I think I could have beat this one. How does an attorney let this happen?
Well, I mean, that's a good question.
That's why I asked it.
I think what happened here was, first of all, the two fire experts that were involved in this case, even though they did not agree on how this fire started, they both agreed that it was not an accidental set fire, that it was arson. And the defense was unable, and I don't know, whether they went to the extent they should have. Maybe that's a question, but they were unable to find an expert that, was able to testify, that was to conclude that it was not an arson at the time. Now,
but my whole thing is
based on the fire science of today and fire experts who have looked at the evidence in this case have concluded that you can't determine that it was an arson.
Sure, but I mean, but even irregardless of that, okay, whether or not they could identify,
right.
Yes, this was arson, no, it wasn't. Even if you even take that one tidbit, I mean, to me, that's like taking one card out of the deck. There's so many other cards left to play here. How does?
Well, I mean, but we have to see the scene we're talking about. We're talking about the early 1970s. We're talking about a fire where 28 people died that night.
Sure.
Well, 29 ultimately. One other person died later on. We have a young African-American boy.
Mexican.
Or it was African-American and Hispanic, Mexican-American.
I'm gonna briefly interrupt you again, and let me ask, because there's been indications, and I'm just gonna boldly ask the question. Do you guys feel or believe that race was a factor in this?
Well, the thing about it is, when you say that, a race factor, you look at the O.J. trial, you know what I mean?
Let's
everybody knows he did it, but you have Mark Foreman, who was a genocide racist, who had testified under oath, said he had never used the N-word before. And then you got police detectives going across his house, dropping droplets of blood after they got blood for O.J. Simpson. Everybody knew he was guilty. But you know what? Karma is universal, cause and effect. That's why he's in jail now, prison now, because karma came and got him. But the thing about it is this, in this tragedy, there's nothing left but to go for it for me.
I totally understand that.
All my family's dead.
But
when I was here as a young kid at 16, all my family was alive, my twin sister, everybody. So the thing is, I'm not pointing a finger on anybody. I forgive them all because I'm not confrontational. I never have been. But I just want the world to know that, don't forget about me. God forbid, if another man goes through this, then, we don't have the best justice system in the world. Everybody, obviously, we know we don't have it. And it's about money, and it's about this and that, And the thing about it is that the Pioneer International Hotel had many secrets, and many were hidden, and it took many people, the Innocence Project, Justice Project, volunteers, investigators. I mean, it just for 12 years, we searched,
Louis,
and we dug up all the evidence, and
I totally get
now
it.
you conclude that that I was wrongfully convicted. But here's another thing too that I want to convey to you. Initially, I refused the offers of no plea, no contest because I was appalled. And I said to myself, well, how can why do I have to plead no contest when they tampered with the jury and they excluded a scientific report that could have exonerated me? So why do I plead no contest for? And my lawyer says, well, Lois, Barbara LaWall, she doesn't want to bend and this and that. She's protecting other people or whatever the reason is. I don't care. I don't have no feelings against her. But who in the world is she protecting?
Gotcha, Louis.
I mean, God forbid. I mean, you're trying to put this in perspective. So are we. Even to this day, we're trying to get it put in perspective.
Clearly.
But the thing about it is, the ultimate thing is that 29 people are dead. A young man lost 42 years, and there's still no explanation from the prosecutor's office.
So I'm going to ask.
So what do you do?
Well, here's
what can you do?
Well, there's lots that can be done, but I'm going to ask you.
Of course there is, but the thing about it is, not looking back at that case, the thing about it is, I just want to make sure that doesn't happen to another man on this earth.
I totally get
God
that.
forbid, man. That's a lifetime. 42 years is a lifetime.
Yes, it is.
Come out of their mother's wombs and die in their mother's wombs and never get a chance of breath, fresh air. I've been on this earth 60 years.
And so,
God allowed me to be here for 60 years. So,
Lewis,
I'm thankful to everybody.
So, Lewis, to make that point, I'm going to ask you the question again, and then I want to. We're running out of time, so I also want to get into the process of your release while we still have time. But because I'm going to ask you the question again, and I'm really honestly kind of just looking for a yes or no, because I think it will illuminate.
It's kind of hard to say yes and no in this kind of a case. That's why I have to try to explain to you. Sometimes because I want to give you the right synopsis of this case. I don't want nobody on this earth to undermine my story, because if they do, then they compromise the 42 years that I did in prison for nothing. I don't want it to go in vain. I want my story to go out to people so they know.
And it won't. But
what to watch out for.
Sure, but here's the question that I'm going to pose again.
Okay.
Do you believe that race was a factor?
Of course, race was a factor.
Okay, that's
when you have a forest fire expert to go study a structural fire. 11 days later, didn't look at no police reports, no witness reports. Before he even stepped in, he was supposed to do an independent study by himself. But before he steps in there, he said, "Oh, by the way, we've got a little colored boy in custody." Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does, and that's the reason that I asked.
That's what I'm saying. There's nothing to more of that, And they were hollering. When they discovered that a forest fire expert had been hired to study the structural fire, people were appalled. Even the dean of the University of Arizona, one of the best universities, I think, in the world, said that who in the hell put Horton Weiss on the Lewis Taylor case?
Well, yeah, it's like hiring a fry cook to go work at Ruth's Chris. It's just stupid.
It cannot be fixed. It is inoperable. But the fact that I am going for it, I'm not confrontational. Everybody who took 42 years of my life or had their hands in it, I forgive them. I have to forgive them. Because if I don't forgive them, then God ain't forgive me for all the little things that I did. And I didn't kill no one, and I didn't start no fires, but I raised my family. My family was alive and well. And now I come to a cemetery full of dead people, my family. So how do you put a perspective on that?
You don't.
I'm sorry, I thank you.
No, Lewis, it's
And I want to thank you, but also on behalf of Kurt Radio and the Justice Project, the Innocence Project, and all the wonderful people working in this case, I'm really ecstatic that you gave me the opportunity to at least, spread my word. Hope that the amber will never go out in this case, and that's all I'm asking for. That this amber, this little light, does not go out, so it won't happen to another man. That's what we have to do. That's part of the justice system. We don't have the best justice system, obviously, because guilty people get away and the innocent. There's an old saying: we would have let 100 people that were suspects than to convict a guilty one. It shouldn't happen in this case. Thank you.
No, you're more than welcome, and believe me, I appreciate you taking the time. So let's.
You may, if you can let Andy say a few words.
No, and in the few remaining minutes that we've got left, how did Lewis's release finally happen? And we got about 4.5 minutes. So how did that happen? And what's next?
Okay, when many years of investigating this case, the prosecution attorney knew that we were working on this case for many years. We decided when we put together our petition, our post-conviction petition, challenging his conviction and asking for a new trial, before we filed it, we gave a copy to the county attorney, shared it with him, and started to meet with them and hoping that we could work this case out where they would recognize that that Lewis, was innocent, that the right thing to do was to exonerate him. Even the Tucson Fire Department, through a request by them, came up with the same conclusion about the fire as our fire experts did. And we thought they would do the right thing. Well, they at that decided not to. We went ahead and filed our petition. We continued discussions with them, again trying to get them to work out a situation where Lewis would be exonerated. The most that they would offer is that if Lewis pled guilty to second-degree murder, they would accept a no contest plea.
Oh, gee, that's nice.
Time served. And as Lewis indicated when we presented that to him, which we obviously were obligated to do so, even though we did not. It's not what we wanted either. Lewis' first reaction was not to accept it. He thought about it for a couple of days and decided that, he wanted out of prison. He didn't, as he put it, he didn't want to give another day to the state of Arizona.
Absolutely.
And
42 years of a load of crap is enough.
Right. And so he accepted a plea. So in April of last year, there was a hearing held in the Pima County Superior Court where Lewis pled no contest to second-degree murder. He was given by the judge time served, and he was released that day. With no record, no parole, no nothing.
So, and is there any sort of restitution? Is there any apology? Is there any,
He was, he was released from prison with $50. There's been, no apology, nothing by the state, but I think there's lots of people, that believe in Lewis and,
sure,
and believe and know that he's innocent and support him.
Which is
great.
great.
Sentiment clearly on Lewis's side.
So, Andy, really quick, we've got about 60 seconds left. And so, I guess the main thing is what I'm looking to wrap up here is that even after all of that, the prevailing attitude has been, well, gee, oops, we're really sorry, we're screwed up. We'll let you go, but well, you're on your own. And I think that is actually once again maybe another miscarriage of justice. And that's one of the reasons why I ask that. Is that to me, if a justice system makes a mistake as grave as the one that they did, let me,
you say I only got like 40 seconds. Look, the county attorney doesn't have immunity not to cure an injustice. I mean, Jesus, when the guy from 60 Minutes approached her walking in downtown Charlottely, he asked her, well, he got convicted by an all-white jury. I mean, it doesn't make sense. I mean, here, she had a moral obligation because the people elected her. She should have cured the injustice. She shouldn't have even plead no contest. I wasn't going to sue anybody anyway because I don't have a confrontational bone in my body. It's just the principle. It's just all about the principle.
Lewis?
And if justice are about principles, then I didn't get no justice.
Lewis, I hate to cut you off. I want to thank you both so much for your time and telling your story. And I hope people out there take it in and listen and are aware that this does actually go on in the world. This has been.
And if they would like to help Lewis, there is a website set up called GoFundMe.com. There's a lot on the website about this case and about Lewis Taylor. So thanks very much.
You're both very welcome, and thank you so much for your time. And my absolute hopes and prayers and best of luck to you, Lewis. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Everybody, thank you so much for tuning into this very unique episode of American Psycho. Stay tuned for whatever's coming up next, because, hey, who knows?
American Psycho. Until we meet again, stay tuned for the Jay and Lou live show coming up next.
A respected powerhouse in unscripted reality television, Original Productions, a Fremantle media company, has 14